Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Library of the Weird. I hope you're doing fine wherever you are. I am, although I'm a bit sweaty because it's quite warm, even though it's September. But that actually got me thinking. And maybe you noticed that I haven't been uploading my monthly wrap-ups or month in books review videos, and the reasons for that are kind of manifold, but most of it boils down to that I have a lot going on in the summer. I go to festivals, to concerts, meet friends, and I don't have many weekends off, and I'm quite tired when I have to go to work in the evening. And that's basically mostly the reason why I haven't been uploading the wrap-ups, and I haven't been uploading as consistently as I had before that. But I think with summer being basically over, that's the perfect time to make like a whole wrap-up of my summer 2023 in books. And I have a stack of I think 12 books next to me, and I've also listened to 5 audiobooks. So you will be hearing about 70 books in total. I won't be doing my usual what I bought this month, and I won't be doing the music I'm listening to. I hope I'll be getting back to that because I like those segments. I will just be talking about the books I read and listened to. I hope you like it, and with that, let's go to the books. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Alma Katsu's The Fervor. I actually did a review video on that. You can find it here. If you haven't watched it, please do. This book is a horror novel that is set in 1940s, I believe in 1944. It's set in the US, and it most prominently features 2 Japanese Americans, a mother and her daughter. They are both interred in a camp for Japanese people, which was quite common in the Second World War because Japan was one of the enemies of the US, but it was still very, very horrible. And it also features, I think, 2 or 3 other people who all come to investigate strange appearances of Japanese weather balloons and sickness, which is described as the fervor, where people become really, really agitated and aggressive. And this book features a lot of Japanese folk myth, which I quite liked a lot. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about this book. I hope you will enjoy it if you read it. So the next book I'm going to talk about is The Wicked Unseen by Gigi Griffis, or Gigi Griffis. I'm very sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name. And this is a YA horror novel. I actually didn't know that it was YA before I read it. I only read reviews after I finished, and they all said, yeah, this is a YA novel. And it kind of makes sense because some of the things happening in here are very simplistic, to say it like that. It is set in 1996 in like kind of a remote town in the US where a girl and her parents moved to because the mother found work there. And it's a very, very zealous town, and our main character is very not zealous. I don't think she identifies as Christian, and she wears black, she dyes her hair, she wears like Pokemon t-shirts, and the people around this town don't really like that. And things really take a turn for the worse when a girl goes missing. And this is kind of 1996. I think 1996 is kind of late for the Satanic Panic, but it really features moments of like the fear of Dungeons and Dragons and music and stuff like that. And I did like this book, although, like I said, it is a YA novel, and you kind of know, if you know this, you notice while reading, because some things are very boiled down and very simplistic, if you know what I mean. But I liked it either way. The next book on my stack is Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. This is a book about a woman that I don't know if she moved to the US with her parents from China or if she was born in the US, but either way, she's kind of a second generation immigrant. And at the beginning of the novel, she works in a fast food chain. She once trained as a pianist. She learned to play the piano, and she was really, really good at it and went to school and the conservatory. But because of reasons we don't know at the beginning of the novel, she stopped. And when she's working in this fast food place, she's getting picked up by a woman that wants her to work for her. And she wants her to work at this strange beauty place, which seems to be all natural and only very beautiful women work there. But people go there and spend tons of money. And we find out that some strange things are happening in this place. And not only is this book very, very exciting, it also teaches a lot about what it is like to be growing up in a country you have almost no connection to. And I actually liked it quite a lot. So the next book on my list is a video I also already did a video on, and this is Into the Forest, Tales of the Baba Yaga, which is an anthology that was edited by Lindy Ryan. You can find my video on it here. And it features some quite famous authors and a lot of authors I've never heard about. There's a story by Gwendolyn Kist, for example, or by Stephanie M. Witowich. And this is a female-only anthology, and other stories concern the Baba Yaga, like this Slavic witch who lives in a house with chicken legs and eats children and stuff like that. And a lot of the stories in here have like a feminist viewpoint and are kind of some are kind of reinventions of the Baba Yaga myth set in today's world, but there's also stories set in like the original Baba Yaga world. And basically the only thing I wondered about while reading this is that there are no Slavic authors in here. Like there's authors from all over the world, but somehow none of them are from Slavic countries. And I find this quite strange when you have an anthology featuring authors from all over the world, featuring a subject from Slavic folklore. So yeah, this is quite strange, but I like this anthology a lot as well. And talking about books I liked, the next book I really loved, and this is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is a book about a woman who works as a biologist. She's kind of a paleobiologist. She looks at bugs when archaeologists are excavating something. So she only looks kind of at dead bugs and tries to find out what people ate and what the climate was like and stuff like that. And her most recent excavation doesn't happen because of reasons I don't really remember. so she moves in with her mom for a few days. And while moving back in with her mom, a lot of bad memories of her grandma came back. And her grandma was a very, very strange and very bitter woman who was very, very horrible to both her mother and our main character. And suddenly, when she moves in there, strange things start happening. Like, she comes into the house and she notices that her mother completely remodeled it after things that are quite untypical for her mother. So she painted she painted the walls like in a whitish beige color, although our main character knows that her mother loves colors. And we kind of learn why this is happening. And I especially love this book because there is a lot of science in here. It doesn't tie directly into the story, but there are like quick bits of science that I really, really did enjoy. So I think this is one of the best books I read this summer. I really, really loved it. The next book on my list is the oldest book on my list, and it's the only book that's older than 2 years. And this is Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, which is a collection of stories that are retellings of the traditional European myths and fairy tales, you know, by the Brothers Grimm and other authors who collected them. And most of these stories as well have a very, very feminist theme, and I very much enjoyed it. So this is something I really would recommend to anyone. It's quite hard to really pin the genre down. I mean, it's kind of horror, and if I had to say, if I had to choose a genre, I would say it's kind of literary horror. And I like this one a lot as well. So you maybe noticed that I'm very positive towards books I read. And that's because I usually don't read bad books. I only read good books. The next one is also an older book. I didn't count this one as an old book because it's a manga. It's Remina by Junji Ito. And I didn't like this one as much as Uzumaki, but I still did like it. I think the setup for the story is really is a very interesting idea. In the beginning of the book, a scientist finds a new planet, and he names the planet after her daughter, who is called Remina. And then really strange things start to happen because the planet comes closer and closer to Earth, and people get really scared. And then a witch hunt begins. I think this is a very exciting manga. I liked it quite a lot, though, like I said, I didn't like it as much as Uzumaki. The next book on the list is the most recent one I read. So maybe noticed the books are not sorted by recency, they're sorted by size. So the smallest book was on top of my stack and the biggest one is at the bottom of the stack. The next book on the list is Burn the Negative by Josh Winning. And this is one of 2 books featuring movie horror on my list. And I quite liked this one as well. I think it started really strong and had a lot of, you know, that the author was influenced by a lot of horror movies and how horror movies happen. The plot is something like this. A woman visits the US for work. She's a journalist and she has to write a piece on a new horror series that's being filmed. And the horror series is a reboot of a movie, and we find out that our main character starred in the movie as a child. The movie is called The Guest House, and it's called a cursed movie like The Exorcist, for example, was, because a lot of the people involved with the movie either died while filming or died shortly after. And she has really, really bad flashbacks because strange things are happening again. All in all, I like this one as well, although I have my qualms with it, and I probably will be doing a review video on this, and then you will find out more about my opinion on this book. I was really excited when I found out that the next novel on my list is coming out, and this is because it was written by Victor LaValle. If you don't know Victor LaValle, he's also the writer of The Ballad of Black Tom, for example, and he writes cosmic horror, and he writes it in a way that is very, very critical of its roots and of H.P. Lovecraft. And this book is no different. It's called Lone Woman, and it features a black woman who has to leave her home, and she wants to start a new life. And she has a very, very big cask with her, and we don't know what's in there, but maybe we'll find out. And she goes north and wants to start a new life. She buys a claim and wants to make something of the land she bought. And this is not only a horror story, this is also a story teaching us many things about how hard it was for women, and especially black women, at the turning of the 19th to the 20th century to do something on their own without a man who could handle things for them. And I liked this book quite a lot as well. Didn't like it quite as much as The Ballad of Black Tom, but I think this is not only an exciting but also a very interesting and a very teachable book, or a book that teaches you a lot, if you know what I mean. I was equally excited for the next book on my list. This is Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is the second novel about a movie I've read in the last 3 or 4 months. And this book takes place in 1990s Mexico, and it features 2 main characters. One is a woman who works as an editor and is a horror film nerd, and the other one is an actor who is kind of doing odd jobs because the acting didn't really work out. And they meet this guy who is very famous for his horror movies, and he made one lost movie. So one movie that has never seen the light of day. And he tells the other 2 about a weird German magician who is possibly a Nazi, who worked with him on the movie but was murdered. And they kind of want to finish the movie, to finish a spell this magician wanted to do with this movie. And when they do that, really, really strange things start happening. And I liked it a lot. I think I gave it 5 stars. I think this is the best book, or maybe the second best book I read in the last 4 months, and maybe this year. So please do read it, and please watch my video on this book. The next book on my list is an anthology as well. It's Mooncalves, Strange Stories, and was edited by John W.M. Thompson. This is really special because it has a very, very small print run. I think there's only 250 of these hardback novels out there. And like the title says, it features very, very strange stories that are all kind of over the place, but all can be kind of sorted as weird fiction. Most of the authors in here are not that well known, and it features stories from writers from all over the world. I really enjoyed this anthology. You can also get it as an ebook, so you don't have to desperately try to get one of these 250 hardcovers. And I would urge you to get one of these. I really enjoyed the stories. And the last physical book I read in the last 4 months and the last physical book I read in the last 4 months is an anthology as well. It's called Screams from the Dark, 29 Tales of Monsters and the Monstrous. It was edited by Ellen Datlow, who is really, really famous for her horror anthologies. And I also did a review on this one, which you can find over here. And this book is stacked with some of the most famous authors in the genre. There's a story by Gamma Files, there's Priya Sharma, there's Nathan Bellingrad, there's Laird Barron, there's John Langan, there's even a story by Stephen Graham Jones and by Caitlin R. Kiernan. So this is really, really stacked. All those stories are about monsters or feature some monstrous elements, and in some stories the monsters aren't even the evil part. This anthology won the Bram Stoker Award this year for the best anthology. I really, really did enjoy it. This was, I think, the best anthology I read this year. I urge you to watch my video on it and read this book as well. And with that, we're finished with the physical books I read this year. Let's go on to the audiobooks. And for those who don't know, or if you haven't watched any of my wrap-up videos, I mostly listen to non-fiction audiobooks. This is for no particular reasons. I just like listening to non-fiction. And the first book I want to talk about is Pathogenesis by Jonathan Kennedy. This is a book that tries to explain some of the greatest challenges and greatest changes in human history, and tries to connect all these changes and all these major historical events with plagues. And this ranges from plagues that took place like when the first settlers came to Europe, and it finishes with the COVID-19 pandemic, and even gives a look what could happen in the future. What are like plagues or pandemics that could happen in the future? It covers like the Black Death. It covers plagues of the ancients, and I found it very, very interesting because not only do you learn a lot about plagues in general, you learn a lot about history. And I say this as someone who really loves history, and I would say I know quite a lot about history. But I learned a lot of new things. I think you have to read some of it with a grain of salt, because he really wants to connect these historic events with plagues when sometimes there are maybe better explanations. But all in all, I really liked it. The next audiobook I listened to was Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, and this can basically be filed under sex education. It tries to break down misconceptions we have about sexuality and about the human, mostly the female body, and about female sexuality. But I learned a lot as a man as well. And I think the main message about this in this book is that if you don't hurt, you're probably normal. Like, don't let others tell you or make you feel that you have to be a certain kind of way. And I think this is a great message, and I really enjoyed this audiobook. Then I listened to 2 audiobooks on depression. The first one was This is Depression by Diane McIntosh. Diane McIntosh is, I believe, a psychiatrist. So while I kind of liked the book, I'm also very critical of it, because the author talks a lot about antidepressants, and this is quite interesting. She talks about how antidepressants work and what they do to your body and stuff like that. But at the same time, she kind of works in the pharma industry, I believe, and she's kind of saying you can't heal depression without antidepressants. So she really devalues talk therapy, psychotherapy, and I didn't really like that. So this one was the worst one of the 2 I've listened to. The second one is called The Upward Spiral, and it was written by Alex Korb. This is, I think Alex Korb is a neuroscientist who kind of talks about what you can change in your life to go from a downward spiral to an upward spiral. And I found this a lot more helpful than the other book, mainly because it talked about things that you can actually instantly do yourself to improve your mental state. But you also said that, like, going to a doctor and using antidepressants and going to talk therapy is really, really important, because you can't heal depression by yourself. You can find ways to feel better. You can find ways to try to better your mental state, but you won't heal a serious depression by yourself. And yeah, I like this book way more than the other one. And the last book kind of led me into a rabbit hole and to my current obsession, and that is cults. The book I listened to was Cultish by Amanda Montell. And this is a book that teaches a lot about cults, about historic cults, about cults that still are going on today. And it tries to explain what kind of language cults use to lure you into them, and then what language do they use that stops you from leaving and gets you to do certain things that under normal circumstances you wouldn't do. And she not only talked about like the very, very famous cults, but she's also talked about things like multi-level marketing or CrossFit and stuff like that. And I really liked her take that you don't have to have a strong cult leader and everyone has to give up their whole lives to join a cult, but that many things exist that aren't essentially cults, but kind of serve the same purpose, or like can really, really damage you, and not only financially, but also socially. I really did enjoy it. Then I watched the Netflix docu called How to Become a Cult Leader. I really enjoyed this as well. And now I'm kind of in a rabbit hole about cults and conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I'm currently listening to an audiobook on QAnon, which I'll be talking about in probably the next wrap-up video. And this is where I'm at. So now I've talked to you about 17 books I read this summer. I'm on track. I've read 35 books this year. I want to read 50, so I have like 3.5 months left to read 15 books. And I think this is quite doable. If you're having reading goals, I hope you're doing well at them. If you don't, that's okay as well. maybe let me know in the comments which was your favorite summer read. And I hope I will be back next week with probably another review video. And with that, I hope you have a great day, have a great week. Goodbye.